Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the daily dose of the Hindu Daily Current Affairs, 12th April 2021. Okay, now today is mostly the continuation of yesterday's news basically. So, if you have not seen yesterday's class, please before seeing this lecture, go and visit our previous video, and then this class would much be easier for you to understand. Okay, now the first news is about international relations, right? Now, as we have seen that India and China along the LAC border, right? That is line of actual control. We had a conflict, right? In the Galwan Valley, as you could remember, around the finger point 11. Now, this is a very positive step that de-escalation has started. That means the forces of China and India are moving towards a probable solution, but we have to always keep and check because China is a country which cannot be trusted anywhere in any situations, right? Now it has done all kinds of provocative behavior, and in the earlier classes you must have seen that China is trying to mess up with Philippines, right? China is trying to mess up with Japan. China is trying to mess up with Vietnam, right? So as we can see that it is trying to enforce superiority over maritime routes in these three countries, and in the land section it is doing it with India. Okay, moving on to the second news today. Now second news is about environment, and as I have told you, environment we have to focus specially. Now it is a factual question that the one horn rhino, right, is found in the Pobitora Wildlife Sanctuary. Pobitora Wildlife Sanctuary. This is not in Vietnam, right? Pobitora Wildlife Sanctuary in Assam, right? So they can directly ask you a question that where does the one horn rhino is found, and you can always tell us that it is around the Pobitora Wildlife Sanctuary in Assam. Okay, now moving on to the present situation of the restrictive measures of the COVID-19, right? Lockdown and the night curfew, etc. Government has taken one more decision that it has banned the export of remdesivir, right? Now remdesivir is a drug which is helpful in treatment of COVID-19, and as you just see, if you are exporting it to somebody, that means you will have a shortage if there is a sudden demand in your country, right? So by banning the export of remdesivir, at least now you can see one thing, that the shortage which is in the Indian market can be handled and the demand will meet the supply. Okay, and there will be no black marketing of this drug. Okay, now this is a very good step taken by the Indian government to stop the exports, and so that the domestic market can be satisfied. Moving on to the fourth point, this is about tourism, right? Now there is a lighthouse, lighthouse, right? Now lighthouse is there by the name of Falls Point. Now this lighthouse is approximately 129 years old, right? It is the oldest lighthouse, right? Now under the government's flagship scheme of Sagarmala, it is trying to develop Falls Point as a tourism hub. Now this is a very good thing, as now this government is recognizing the local tourism centers, right? Because of this, you would see that the local area would get developed instead of people going abroad for tourism. When they'll visit the Sagarmala, right, then they can see this lighthouse. Okay, moving on to the fifth news. Now fifth news is a thing which has a specially concern for everybody, because as we have now seen, as you are also doing, now there is a trend of teaching online classes, right? Now there is a trend of e-books being studied. Now in both the cases, this can only be done by the people who have visuals, right? That means people who have eyes. Okay. Now, if somebody is a divyang, right, then what will he do? If somebody is visually challenged, right, that means he is either squint, right, or he is blind. In that cases, what will happen to that visually challenged children? How will they do their studies? Right? Now this is a concern, and this the government has to take certain steps, as NCRTs which are available under the Diksha program are also not helpful to these visually challenged people. They are not enabled according to the needs of visually challenged. Okay. As we all are studying, they should be also study. Okay. Now moving on to the sixth news. Sixth news is that the government is planning to certify, the central government is planning to certify the shrimp. Right. Now, as our coastal states, we export a lot of shrimp, right? But the shrimp exported sometimes is rejected back based on the food consignment or bacteria or food policy, food safety standards. So now the government has started a scheme by the name of Shapari. Under this, it will certify the frozen shrimp products so that it will not get rejected, and this is according to the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization technical guidelines. Right? Now when you are certifying it internationally, right, then the chances of getting rejected are very less. Moving on to the seventh news today. In the seventh news, you will be seeing that China and Russia, right, now these two countries are the all-weather friends, are trying to undermine the Myanmar coup. Why? This is a very good point. Why they'll do that? Right? Undermine the Russian coup in the United Nations Security Council. Right? Now, United Nations Security Council tried to bring an arms embargo. Right? That means nobody can supply arms to Myanmar. But Russia is trying to challenge it, not let it happen, because these two are the biggest exporters of arms to Myanmar. Right? Now China has certainly a very good market of other things in Myanmar also as well. So its foreign exchange would fall, its export will fall. So they are trying to put this situation low. Okay? They are not trying to see the general humanitarian crisis or administrative crisis which is going to happen, and which is also not good for India. Okay. Now, as we have seen in yesterday's news that Iran had made a very good nuclear and it has managed to enrich uranium, right? The nuclear deal with USA had fallen, so it has enriched uranium. Now what Israel has done, Israel has made a cyber attack, right, on the facility, right? Now Israel has made a cyber attack facility located at Natanz, right, so that the enrichment of uranium cannot take place any further, and Israel's newspapers etc. have accepted this fact that it was done by Israel. Okay. Now moving on to the last news today. Last news is that China, as we know, its vaccine is not that much potent, against the Wuhan virus, right? And so it is trying to mix up all the vaccines. So when you try to mix up all the vaccines, you can try to increase the efficacy, right? Now efficacy is that extent to which it is successful, right? So China is trying to mix all the 2 of the 3 vaccines, and then it is trying to make up a single vaccine which is highly efficient, and as we know that also rests on God's needs. Okay, so this was all today in today's news. Thank you. Jai Hind.